I think the first question I want to dig into is, what are people actually doing when they say we want to do AI? Customers are asking for AI. What do they really mean? And what do you think they really mean when they say that? Because we see this from an investor standpoint. Investors saying, you should be doing something with AI. The CEO goes to the rest of their team, what are we doing with AI? They hand that to the CIO or the CTO and goes, what are we doing with AI? And then generally the partner sits there and goes, we're going to need to solve this for them. Is that a common thing, or what are the customers actually asking for? Henrik, maybe we'll start with yourself.
I think quite a few customers are starting this from a cost savings exercise. Some customers are obviously including efficiencies and productivity gains and those sort of things. You can obviously look at this from two different angles. If you look at deploying AI for end users, more like a Gen AI practice, that's I suppose a different angle to if you deploy agentic AI to optimize your workflows, your software stack, and essentially how you operationalize AI into your organization. So say, for example, quite a common theme that we're seeing right now is that customers have, say, for example, X amount of million of dollars of cost in a level 1, level 2 operation center, and they know that most of the tasks that can be optimized with AI, that's typically a really quick way of maximizing the value of AI, especially agentic AI. So I would say that's one theme that we're seeing quite a lot. The other trend, if we can call it, is really for customers to look at their SaaS stack, say, for example, their ITSM tool or their CRM tool or their ERP tool or whatever it may be that has fairly significant contract values for the customer, and they're wondering how can they actually utilize agentic AI to replace that. So, for example, we just deployed a ITSM replacement for a customer in the US called NuWave Brands, which essentially saved them $5 million a year in licensing fees. So it's very tangible, very real examples of how you can actually find those optimizations for customers.
Fantastic. And Rufus, maybe your view on this, what are the customers asking for when they come to Kerv and ask for AI?
So I think it does depend quite a bit on which part of the business they're from. In contact center world, they've generally got a pretty clear idea of what they want. So, and I think contact centers have more mature acceptance of AI anyway. So they're then pretty clear, I want to do more automation, we want to contain more self-service within our digital channels, we want to provide tools for our agents to help them be more efficient and effective. And I think there as well, because there's so much data in contact center and so many metrics in terms of measuring, volumes, throughput, ROIs are much simpler to test and to see and to drive, right through to, people who've got a business process that they might say, we think there might be a case for AI here. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes we think, well, actually, no, probably there's a different way of solving this. But we also do have the customers with the really big thinking. This is a problem we've been trying to solve for quite a long time. Is this something that AI can help us with? And they're the really interesting projects, but they're the harder ones to get off the ground.
Makes sense. And maybe we can ask around it, not just the customers asking around. You made a good point about the different types, but where in the organization is AI kind of push coming from? And Mark, do you want to take us on that?
Yeah, we tend to find it not really from the IT team. It's from contact center, and it will be the contact center leaders. If it's from the business, it's tend to be coming down from the CTO or CFO. That's really where we're looking at it. The IT team, believe it or not, always seem a bit reluctant to move forward. Whether that's their lack of knowledge or understanding, I don't know. But we don't always get the most assistance from a company's IT team. They seem to be the ones who push back the most.
It's really interesting. The IT teams are not as involved from an IT perspective on this. Would you agree with that, Tim, in your perspective?
I think it comes from all spaces. If you talk to the CFO, they see AI is going to do something to reduce costs. If you talk to IT, they see it as nice and shiny. If you look at HR, they're saying, well, it's going to improve experience. The honest thing is they're all wrong. If you look at HR, IT, facilities, they're horizontal plays in an organization. If you save money there, you're still buying something to save money. the real trick I find with AI is actually turning that conversation around, and AI is a front-end tool. It's actually to improve sales, to increase conversion. If you focus on reducing cost, all you're doing is fighting a battle on cost. You're not fighting a battle on growing your market or growing your market share, which is where AI should be invested in. And I think, so you have the conversations coming from different places, and I find literally it doesn't matter where it comes from. My conversation is to elevate to somebody higher in the organization who has a very vested interest in business success, not adopting the latest technology.
It's really interesting. And Mark, obviously a different perspective from your side, but is AI with the service provider and MSP community you're working with, is that coming through in the same way or different?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you do it right, you're kind of getting a lot of different pieces. Because we're a tool provider and we're supposed to make it simple, we have different customer types. So it starts with an operator, and they have different goals than, say, a reseller versus an end user customer of those operators. And so a customer may say, I want to troubleshoot things within my voice environment, or I might want to provision or do things more efficiently, whereas the operator says, you know, I want to get to market sooner, I want to deliver services faster, I want to have less departments that it traverses. And so, you know, some of it is you know, not necessarily what am I going to charge for the AI to monetize it, but also, you know, what other efficiencies and savings am I going to get, you know, by having the AI as part of it. So I think you kind of get a couple of things happening at the same time when you deploy it right.
All right, so the deploying right, I think, moves on to my next question. We saw the slide earlier looking at why are AI projects failing? And 4 examples up there from studies which show that at a huge rate that this stuff's not actually returning ROI. I mean, who wants to take that of why? Tim, you can go ahead on the first one.
We spoke about this one earlier on. It's great to see our logo up there. There's a really good public report you can go and grab, but basically 90% of AI projects don't hit enough to get their money back. And the economy isn't in a place where we've got money to spend it on white elephants, unicorn projects. That money came from somewhere, and when those 90% of projects failed, that money has to come from somewhere else. And so people are far more critical. And there's a phrase I shared with Dom earlier on, it's the why of AI. Why? You want AI, excellent. Is it artificially intelligent, or you actually got a destination and an outcome and build back from that? Too many conversations are technology-led, cost-led, hype-led. What's the why? What are you going to change? And if you're going to change nothing except for have a new toy to play with, don't do it. Walk away. Because we're not going to make any money selling it to you to see a failed project. There's actually got to be a reason to reach this AI nirvana, this state you want to get to. But if it's not there, there's no point chasing it.
Henrik, from NCT's perspective, why do you see as much failure rate as the others are seeing on there, or what's?
We maybe see at times where the customer's expectations in terms of the outcomes are not 100% there. I think there's also maybe in the beginning, not necessarily as much anymore, is that because the perception of AI comes from the end user perspective. ChatGPT just helped me create my document, and it didn't cost me a single dime, so AI must be cheap. When you implement agentic AI to an organization to augment or replace workflows that are extremely heavy, it's not cheap to do so. So I think the KPIs going into pilots are not always there. The third thing is that there needs to be funding for those pilots, and there needs to be clear outcomes, KPIs, in terms of how do you measure that. I think this all comes down to, and I agree with Tim, is that there's a bit of a hype in thinking that AI can resolve everything and every single situation. That's not true. Qualification is super key when we have our sellers go and position and talk to our customers to make sure that we gather the right data so we can then propose the right solution for our customers. But I think the key thing is that the KPIs are not always aligned with the business outcomes.
Dom, can I just come in on that? I think it'd be really interesting to see some current day figures for the success rates of projects. And I do think we can be a bit harsh on businesses who, let's say 3 years ago, were being told, you're not going to exist, you won't have a workforce, you're going to be the next Kodak. And I think lots of people did dive in a bit with 2 feet, but they wanted to experiment, they wanted to play, and they wanted to understand what this could do. The capabilities are hugely improved now from 3 years ago. The integrators are much better. They've learned some mistakes and lessons along the way too. And I think I've definitely seen a shift in projects away from what can we do with this, to your point, to I'm not trying to solve a real problem here. Can we use AI to solve it? And I don't recognise those failure rates in the projects we're involved in at all. And I think it's possibly because of the stage of maturity of the market, but it's because we're trying to solve problems, not experiment with toys.
It may also be that there's a bit of a bad aftertaste from RPAs that weren't as successful as they were promised to be. And obviously, many people are seeing then, well, AI is just the next iteration of RPAs, which it is and it isn't, but it's much more powerful than RPAs. So maybe there's a bit of a kind of lack of trust as well, that can technology really come and resolve those issues that RPA was promised to do, but failed at least to a certain degree. So they may be part of that as well.
I was just going to add, we've all seen the hype curve. Forget that. What we're seeing from a business perspective is you had AI curiosity, AI experimentation, and now we've reached AI accountability. So the first two stages, you can get away with doing some really wild, crazy stuff. We're now at the point is you can't. And that's where we're seeing that increase in success, because they're asking the why of AI, they're looking at the accountability, and they're looking at the outcome. And we're seeing that journey, but we're still on that journey.
Well, I think if you get the players up here who have already done the experimentation and are providing the tools, then now you have a blueprint or a template that others can take from and do at mass. And so then those numbers of success go up exponentially when now you're kind of just stamping it out. You've taken things like security, like early on, right? There was no security. You saw the horror stories where source codes being given out and everything else, and now the ISO 42001 is in place, and there's some framework things that are happening that now, as you start to add those pieces into your stack, now your success rates are going up because you're actually delivering simplified tools that people can get behind.
Yeah, I'd agree with the testing phase is kind of over now, and I still think organizations are going to test and trial things. And what I've always thought is interesting with AI is the speed and cost to actually test and build prototypes is actually a lot quicker than it has been before. So that failure rate probably was exacerbated by, let's try this little thing here, and that counts as a failed project because it didn't work, rather than, yes, these are whole IT refurbs or renewals. So interesting. And you made a point, though, about people not understanding the cost of AI, of it's not just a ChatGPT conversation. How are you turning these AI projects into recurring revenue rather than just one-off projects of going, here's professional services to deploy, rather than how we're going to make money after this in the long run? Mark, do you want to take us on that a bit?
Yeah, we recently undertook quite a big project for a well-known bank, and that was a one-off project. But as it's progressed, we've worked alongside them to look at this will always be an ongoing project, because once we conclude today's problem, there'll be another one. So what we've agreed with them, and their phase 2, is a sort of scheduled consultation, consultancy, and ongoing. So we've now monetised that across a 5-year term. So initially it was a one-off, but now we've got a contract with them where we've sort of say every quarter we come in, if we don't utilise it, then we move it on to the next quarter, so on and so forth. That, I think, is the only way you're going to do it. You're not going to do it otherwise everything's always a single project.
That makes sense. Does that ring true with everyone on the panel, that there's not a recurring model to be made off this in terms of a true monthly cost?
I think so. At NTT, we obviously our kind of DNA is very much in managed services, and that's what we implemented into our agentic AI services as well. So a large portion is obviously in PS and upfront cost, but then we've set up what we call an AI factory, where customers can just bring their use cases into the factory, and then they churn into POVs and real agents, and then they're being managed and observed, red teaming, all of the kind of governance layers on top of that, and that's the recurring element. That's if you don't have your own AI IP. So for the rest of us that are then providing a service, I think that's a fairly good model to realize recurring revenue.
Mark?
Yeah, and people come to us for the standardization, right? So we're not looking to do a bunch of one-off projects. If we have a one-off that benefits the entire ecosystem, then we'll bring it in and it becomes something repeatable. And I think that that's where, then you get to start monetizing it through either charging for the service and or, getting the efficiencies and the savings that come from it. But, we specialize in taking it, making it simple and making it repeatable so that, you can push it out to the masses, because we think that's really where, you start to really make money, is when you can do it over and over.
Makes sense.
I was just going to say, I think actually the market's created an opportunity for us to create a reoccurring business. I've been in contact center for 35 years, give or take, and a lot of the people who used to look after, particularly in the telephony world, that estate, they've dumped and run. They've retired, they've left, they've found other jobs, they've gone on to be consultants. The people who are now running these platforms, they don't know how they run. They don't know the basics. You say ISDN2, they don't know what it is. You think you're playing Scrabble. It's this opportunity we now have to bring knowledge, not just to turn it on and light it up, but to deliver optimization. And then, as you hinted at there, whether you have your own IP or not, data poisoning, LLMs, are we getting the right value? Are people actually using it? I've spoken to customers who say, yeah, we've rolled out Copilot and everyone's using it. They've used it once in 6 months. They've classed it as utilization. That's not utilization, that's dipping your toe. So there is an ongoing, and I think I completely agree with this, going back, whether it's monthly, quarterly, whatever, we have to realize on behalf of our customers this return on investment. Don't just dump and run. It's great to sell licenses, make minimum margin, but going back and actually delivering real value is where we're going to make the money, because it makes our customers happy and it gives us a reason to go and talk to them.
So how do you prove ROI? And you talked earlier about a lot of this is a financial conversation rather than anything else. Is that the one KPI people are looking for? Is that cost savings, or are you measuring productivity? What's the KPIs that we're looking for? Do you want to start us down in the end?
It really does depend. So, like I said, contact center is really easy. I think there are knowledge worker environments where, I think if you think back to Microsoft Copilot or the Enterprise Chat GPT or any of those services where, if you're going to look for an ROI, you're not going to get it. If you might help people save half an hour a day, what do they do with that? You can't measure that. But if you've got people whose time is incredibly strained and who their work-life balance isn't right, and they're people who skills you want to retain, it's an investment as part of your your employee experience piece. So where it sits on the balance sheet or in a straightforward ROI P&L, it's not always that easy to determine. We're also seeing where we're helping clients to automate with where AI is playing a key part of that. Some of that in their business cases, it's about how can we decouple, headcount growth with growth. We want to be able to continue to grow. We want to build a model that is scalable, that helps us grow without necessarily having to linearly increase our cost base. So, the straightforward classic, I'm going to save this much and spend this much ROI is not always the model here.
There was a conversation 2 weeks ago at Ignite, and there was a conversation with one of the directors there. And it was this question, right, so you've got Copilot and it's saved you 4 hours. What are you going to do? How do you prove the value? And his response was really simple. My job is to talk to customers. If I've got an AI that takes away the admin, I talk to more customers. So although you don't see an hour-on-hour benefit, what you should ultimately see is an improved customer awareness, customer connection, customer retention, customer conversion. But it's about, it is subjective. I spoke to a gambling firm, and I said, well, if we give you back office this, it's going to save them an hour a week. He said, what do I do? Change them to 39-hour contracts to pay for the license? Fair point. But it's not that we're trying to do, and that's why my focus at the start was don't focus on enabling the back office, because that's cost reduction. Focus on the front office, and revenue increase is where you're going to generate a win.
From an agentic standpoint, do you see that as well from NTT?
It's a good question. So I think agentic is typically kind of the more evident in the back end, in the workflows, back end processes, less so kind of providing productivity to the end users' day-to-day work, although the results would be there. So I think the ROI conversation is very much on a P&L level when it comes to agentic AI. And that's typically where the conversation goes. But then to Tim's point, there's also organizations that are looking for example, for a large global paint company, they are asking us to design now a AI engine to help increase their paint sales, essentially to have a front end for their online store to pick the right paint and have some sort of a AI augmentation on top of that. So there's definitely projects out there that will enable customers to be more productive and more competitive in their own market. But I think in agentic it's very much driven by the underlying cost.
We do have any questions from the audience. We're happy to take them as we go through, but I have got a Slido which if everyone could take part in, and it's what is your biggest obstacle your customers face when adopting AI? And it's a fill in your own one you can do here, so we'll see what comes up on screen. But maybe we'll pose that to the audience, or the question up here is, what do we think as a panel? Then you can all look behind and see what the audience says. So what do you think the biggest, no Mark, no looking. What do you think the biggest obstacle is to adopting AI?
Well, I think, the knowledge and where to start. I mean, every customer has different, needs and things that they're trying to do, and there's so much noise on what tools to use, who to partner with, where to go, and so it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, I think we use all the buzzwords of, what are the outcomes, but it's actually, true is what am I trying to accomplish, and you have to kind of go backwards from there, then to find the right partner to deploy that, and again, do it correctly.
I'm just going to touch on the one I've seen on the screen. I know I'm cheating, but
you guys could see the screen there.
Yeah, I'm not looking behind me, as you said, Dom. Users reverting back to shadow AI, right? People always go for the course of least resistance, but it ties into security. Those top 2 points, from the trends was AI and security. Well, I don't see them as two different things. They're both based on data, quality and protection of that data. So all of these conversations tie in with security is fear-led, if I'm honest. AI is led by about a potential outcome. My biggest obstacle, if I can answer that question, is about differentiating between the two and creating an outcome conversation rather than a fear-led or a cost-led conversation.
But the security element is also the opportunity, because that's where you can really deliver the value to the customers by managing their environment, providing the monitoring, the observability, and the SLAs and XLAs that customers are looking for. I think where we see, especially in the enterprise, where they do want to move quickly, they don't have the skill set internally to deploy and implement AI in a industrial scale. And then to the shadow IT conversation as well, it's the same issue, is that you have rogue departments doing rogue things without IT knowing that. So it's to bring that in together into a managed service platform that is really the opportunity for all of us.
And that's why I mentioned ISO 42001 earlier, right? Because if people are going to trust you to use your tools that you're going to put out in the market, then security has to be the base foundation of anything that you're going to put out, for people to feel comfortable that they can trust your products, that you're not going to be sharing their information, that the data is secure, all of the factors.
I think a way we help our customers with that is just helping them understand risk and helping them introduce a risk management. A lot of our clients aren't big enough to go for the 42001, and it's things like helping them stand up a risk assessment process for AI, understanding what they need to do to not be front page of the BBC website when something goes wrong. Because security is one aspect, but it's also you make the wrong decision based on a bias or some other inherent problem within the system. So that's a key risk factor that people are worried about.
Makes sense, Mark.
I think there's one word missing off of there. There is trust, but I think the one word missing there is fear. People are scared of the unknown, and they don't necessarily understand what AI is. The amount of customers I go into, we want to do AI. What do you want to do? Well, I don't know what it does. And when you start to tell them, we had somebody from a legal company earlier, we have quite a big legal base. There's a fear there. Where's that data going? Is it going to be ring-fenced? None of our barristers are going to use it because it's fear. That's one of the obstacles we have.
Interesting. And one of the things that came up here, and you mentioned about customers not having the knowledge. How have you as a business, we're 3 years into this cycle, I think it was 3 years that we're getting here, but all of you have kind of built practices around or focused around this. How have you been able to skill up internally to get to this position? Because it's not like you're moving into an established industry where you can go and acquire businesses and bring those skills in. This is something fairly organic, I imagine you've had to do yourself.
We took a journey quite early on in this, is to split it down into 3 separate conversations. If you look at AI, it's your automation, your ITSM, it's your end user enablement, or you know what, I've got a shed load of money, I'm going to go and build one, LLM, data science. And our view was, well, the first thing is we need to help our customers make that first decision. Which path are you going to go down to? If you're going to go down to data science, we don't need to skill up to give you data scientists. You're going to go and find those in the network. If you're going to go down the user enablement, that's an off-the-shelf capability. So make sure we decide which off-the-shelf products we get behind. And the ITSM one, well, we've already got a capability. It's just the same as before with AI added on. And unfortunately, I don't want to diminish what AI is doing in that space. It's making a massive difference. But it meant we could focus on one specific area, and that is the off-the-shelf AI enablement, because we weren't writing AI engines. 3 choices, and develop the skills that we didn't already have to fill the gaps to help our customers make the right choices was the answer.
Does anyone else want to add what they've done internally?
We've done a fair bit of hiring in the past 12 months, and we've also mandated that every single opportunity, every single proposal has to have an AI component to it. So that's kind of forcing our sellers as well to wedge it in, even though that it doesn't necessarily sound like the most natural thing, but it's really helped us as well to have the right conversation with customers from a kind of a go-to-market and seller standpoint. It's very much moved from a kind of a solution selling approach to a consultative selling, and again, kind of focus on the outcomes and talk about that, how do we deliver against those KPIs and ROIs. But lots of internal training has been also mandated all the way down from the CEO, so and that is ongoing at NTT.
So Rufus.
Yeah, it's very similar, but I'd just say it's been bloody hard work, because we've got a bunch of, the skills aren't out there to go by. And our people are all pretty busy already. So, it's been quite hard work, but it's also been something that our people have really embraced. It's a skill that they've absolutely wanted to have, an experience they've wanted to get. So it's been hard, but a collaborative experience, I would say.
Yeah, we've done the same. We've gone on hiring some top talent, that has the AI knowledge, but then it's a hybrid approach, because you have to have the context. So you have to be able to train the AI on your product and your specific use cases and things to make your product better. And so if you don't have those SMEs internally, that then they use the tools that you bring in outside people to handle AI, right, it's kind of pointless. And so it's a collaborative effort with internal staff and new people that come in that have that expertise.
And you make a good point there around how are you using AI internally? What do you need to do to drive that? And Henrik mentioned that as well. But what have you done? Have you adopted Copilot? Have you adopted other AI tools internally? What are you doing to make yourselves and your own businesses more productive with AI, rather than building solutions to your customers?
So we have a pretty robust AI infrastructure to where it's multimodal. So bringing in OpenAI and Grok and various other platforms, right? And it's because different LLMs perform differently with different tasks, and so being able to segregate different things to different pieces has been pretty key. But again, if you don't have the subject matter experts within the product, right, you can only train it on what you have and make that product better and be able to deliver additional tools around that. You can't necessarily, from some outsider, say, go build iPilot. AI is not going to have that context. It's just not going to be able to do that out of the blue. But if you train it on your code and you do all those other things, and then you start asking it questions specific to what you have, then it can truly start helping you improve and making it better.
Makes sense. Mark, on your side at Charterhouse, what's been done internally?
Part of our business, part of our group was a Microsoft implementation organisation, so we're lucky. So we've rolled out Copilot. But on the service side of it, we've adopted the Zoom contact centre, and we're using Zoom Virtual Agent to pretty much take all of our calls. So we're utilising it. It's also useful because you can experiment on yourselves what works and what doesn't. So, that's spread across the entire business now.
Excellent. CDW?
Yeah, we're a Microsoft house in the UK, so researcher, analyst, Copilot Studio, facilitator, and we're encouraging people by having a governance system internally to build their own agentic AI. So if you want to build a Copilot Studio AI, go ahead, knock yourself out. It's great. We're a technology company. We'd love you to do that. But it's not just a sandpit where you go and do what you want. We actually have governance in there to make sure people are doing it for the right reasons, in the right direction, with the right safeguards. So giving them the tool was the one thing. Creating the boundaries and a safety net was the second. And I think the most important part of giving AI into our organization.
Yeah, I think it's so very similar. We've got 800 technologists, and stopping them building stuff with AI is the hardest thing, rather than encouraging them to. But stopping them doing 800 of the same project is hard. So, but we have a sort of ecosystem enablement offer that we've had for some time, really around things like Power Platform, which we take to our customers, and sort of adapting that for AI has been really useful in terms of helping introduce that governance, introduce the communication, and just put a little bit of structure around it.
Fantastic. We've got time for one last question to end on, and it's for those struggling to spell AI. They're that early in the journey. Some of your customers. What should they do next? What do you do to hold their hand throughout this process? Who wants to go first on that? Henrik, you're going to go first. There you go.
Yeah. So I think it's going back to basics. Is really trying to map out what is the long-term vision and strategy for the organization, and then try to build a roadmap on top of that. And again, I think keep it simple and keep it fairly relevant for the customer in terms of how they can gain the values of agentic AI or AI in general is really the best way to do it. But to be honest, this is not really a problem that we are seeing. Like we are seeing a extremely high demand in all kinds of AI services. So I think it's more so just to kind of structure this in the right way so that we hit the right KPIs for the customers.
Fantastic.
Yeah, similar. We're not really having that challenge, but we do have some customers where we will just run. We have sort of workshop offer, and it's let's bring a couple of processes or challenges that you've got. But on the spelling AI, I did have one CFO who turned up thinking it was a meeting about accrued income, which was amusing to solve.
Yeah, I think for us, it's just a matter of keeping things simple. Doing it for them basically to where you can make it repeatable. And so a lot of times we'll design something and it'll cover 60% of the use cases out there, and then with every cycle we add another 5%, another 10%. And I think that in order for it to really take off, especially mid-size down to SMB, you're going to have to make it extremely simple where they don't have to have their own AI talent and they can just adopt tools, plug some data sources in, and go.
Tim?
Yeah, I think the answer is it's the why of AI. Basically, you're going to put AI into any organization is to help you make a better data-driven decision, period. End of story. Whether it's agentic or generative or end user, is to help you use the data and to analyze more data to help you as an individual make a better decision. And if I talk to any customer, it's forget AI, because you've probably been sold something that's artificially intelligent rather than artificial intelligence. Understand where you're trying to get to. The why, the data-driven decision, go forward and make money.
Mark, to finish off?
Yeah, I think from our side, it's using it ourselves, which then relays easier to the customer because you can give them a real-world example. So like with our contact center, virtual agent, but even to the point where we're running every meeting with transcription, AI, summarization. So even if they don't understand it, you're sending them it, and they kind of get it.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like everyone to give a massive round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great. Thank you.